here.
Welcome to the May 9th, 2022 Education Committee and Supplementary Regular Board Meeting of the Lower Merion Board of School Directors. The board believes it's in its best interest and the best interest of the students of the district to hear comments from district residents. An opportunity will be given later in the meeting for public comment, both in person and through the chat feature, which will be read by Ms. Buckman. This meeting is being live streamed and video recorded with sound for public broadcast. All participants joining via Zoom will be muted upon entry. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Mameen for a superintendent's update.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, President Klein. Good evening, everyone. This evening, before we move into our presentations, I want to provide an opportunity for two updates. One of the updates, as we've had a few meetings in the past in regards to healthy start times, and there was a lot of dialogue in regards to public comment, and we are at a point, from the administrative standpoint, we will be beginning to re-implement or rediscuss where we are with healthy start times in preparation for a full comprehensive presentation in June. So I wanted to make sure that we got that out there and put that on public record. So once again, in June, we will have a full presentation on healthy start times. And what it's going to focus on, where we were, where we are now, and how we will prepare for healthy start times in the future when that opportunity arises. The second update is in regards to our health and safety plan. As a letter has just gone out moments ago, I would say about 30 minutes ago, to our families in regards to our rising COVID numbers in our schools. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Schaefer to be able to give us a little more details on how we are moving forward during these times. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Much of what I'll highlight is included in the message that went to families this evening. I know many are concerned regarding the rising case numbers we're seeing in the district as well as across our community. We have been, as we always have been, in close contact with the Montgomery County Office of Public Health regarding these cases, and we have been reassured by that local health authority that we are taking the right steps. They are not recommending any further mitigation measures at this time. They have noted that our high level of reporting and monitoring and follow through is, they routinely compliment us on our efforts in that regard. So while there are cases, higher case numbers being reported, it certainly gives me some reassurance and hopefully the community some reassurance to know that these are cases that are being monitored, that we apply the required guidance, whether it's a mask to stay situation, and doing the requisite testing and follow-up for each one of those cases. So our nursing team continues to be on top of that. In addition to the testing that they're offering, we have the COVID line that remains available to our families. I know some districts have gotten away from that type of reporting system, but ours remains available 24/7 and is monitored almost as often. So we encourage, again, families to continue to screen for symptoms. And again, there's some additional details or reminders in that notification. One other note that we've heard a few times is regarding some other local districts, specifically Haverford, that was identified as a district that's requiring students to return to masking. As a resident and parent in that township, the communication was around strongly recommending masking in a particular elementary school that had seen some rising numbers. So I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that piece as it had come to our attention a few times. So we are continuing to monitor the situation. We are acting in accordance with the guidance of the local health authorities, and we encourage our community to contact us through that health line if there are any other questions or concerns that they have.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer.
Thank you so much, President Klein. And yes, go ahead, please.
Just to clarify, Haverford's recommending masks, and that's our position as well, right now? That's the recommendation of the Health and Safety Committee?
The Health and Safety Committee is that masks remain optional because our county levels are in low at this time. But as a practical matter, we encourage parents to make decisions based on the information that they're receiving regarding their particular schools. But we're not changing our recommendation of masking at this time. It remains consistent with the CDC guidance.
Okay.
So masking is optional. I'm sorry, may I add that unless a student is participating in the Mass to Stay program, which has certain requirements.
Are there any more questions on the board? Thank you so much, Mr. Schaefer. And again, we will continue to monitor our numbers and report out to our families as necessary as we're moving through these times towards the end of the school year as we're experiencing some spikes. At this time, we'd like to move into our presentation this evening with Dr. Martin Patone and also Dr. Gaudioso for our Early Literacy Evaluation Committee presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to provide a little bit of context. Dr. Martin Patone is going to take us through this evening's presentation, but I wanted to remind you all of some of the elements that you have previously heard us present on this school year. This idea of evaluating our early literacy program has grown out of several years of work looking at our language arts curriculum. We're working from a 2011 anthology, and we have worked over the years to add supplements and some resources that support alignment with the standards. And as we went through our K-4 reimagination, part of what we shared with you was that this articulation work will continue. We've looked at our K learners, and the idea of full-day kindergarten has been on the table as something to continue to study. And this articulation of our language arts program, as well as our kindergarten program, is something I had shared would be underway. I just want to also put this in the context of our MTSS work, which really is anchored in establishing a really strong foundational core Tier 1 program. And you will recall our presentation on ESSER, where we did commit some funds to look at early literacy, in particular in the area of phonics. So this is tied to things you've heard us share previously, and this is Dr. Martin Patone joined us the second semester this year and has really taken a dive into the work. We're excited to have her, and she's leading this work forward this spring.
Thank you, Dr. Gaudioso. Thank you so much for having me to come and share with you our Early Literacy Evaluation Committee timeline. I think so. Is it going that way? There we go. Thank you. So, in light of the pandemic, there has been renewed focus on literacy instruction. And as part of our professional responsibilities, we keep abreast of all the research and trends in education, especially in the area of literacy. While we want to continue to provide a rich learning experience, we also need to focus on those areas that were affected during the pandemic. In Lower Merion School District, we also continue to challenge our thinking. And in light of the work with equity, we're not just looking to improving, we're looking to see how we can be most effective with the programs and resources we have to address the needs of all of our learners. So our why. This is more than just a program evaluation. It is also an opportunity, post-pandemic, to do an informal needs assessment on the infrastructure that will support this learning for our earliest learners. As Dr. Gaudioso mentioned, our core ELA resource is from 2011. It's pre-PA core standards. Our current program, although the shifts associated with the PA Core required supplements to align with the new standards and adherence to the foundational skills, we needed to continue to do the work for that clarified continuum of literacy skill development necessary for mastery at each level. So we've taken the beginning steps, and there's some supplements to address these areas. Pre-COVID, the district did work, this was pre-me, to align in the curriculum documents to the new standards, and you updated the report card to address the new standards. However, we think it's important and essential to ensure this alignment of the phonics instruction both to the standards and best practices. We want to ensure alignment and guaranteed experiences across all classrooms in our district. The data that we would be using to inform this work will be qualitative data from the achievement teams in all of the buildings, as well as the current DIBELS data, which I am going to show you a snapshot of next. The slide is not, there we go. I apologize, double hit it. So this slide is just a snapshot of a composite. It's from our DIBELS data system, Amplify. The DIBELS composite score is a combination of multiple DIBELS scores and provides the best overall estimate of the student's early literacy skills and/or reading proficiency based on these screeners. You will notice, and in our earlier presentation, that the number of students increased from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year in all grade levels. This could be due to a multitude of factors. It could be if a student missed the assessments in the beginning of the year. It could also be if during those assessments, the student didn't produce a baseline score. It's a timed screener. And then if they don't adhere to those guidelines, it's a 0, and it's to avoid frustration for the rest of the screening assessments, so they wouldn't come up in the number. We could have new students to the district, and we could have students who are returning from a virtual learning experience. Our committee composition is representative of a balance across the buildings and size of the buildings. We want representation from the grade levels, K to 2, members of the achievement team. In addition, when we invited all K2 teachers to participate, we wanted to get a balanced perspective. We were grateful for the response, and we had to go through a process of principals, supervisor, and director of elementary education to look at the list and ensure that we were getting a balance of perspectives that was inclusive of teachers new to the district, veteran teachers, teachers new to the kindergarten classroom, teachers who had been in the kindergarten classroom, teachers who previously had participated in this type of committee work, and those who haven't. This is a sneak peek at the detailed plan and process. The next slide will highlight and emphasize the work to be done. So the committee, during this next month, we've already begun to collate and review the current data on our K3 students in the areas of phonemic awareness, phonological skills, and phonics. We have input from Title I surveys, building surveys, teacher feedback input in terms of programs and resources and needs, and building learning plans. The committee is going to get together to develop consensus on an area of need relative to current practices, resources, and assessments. They will also work to articulate a rationale for the program refresh. They will identify the programs to be evaluated, and then overall provide a recommendation for a program for next school year, as well as recommendations for how we should implement that program. When we enter into these programmatic inquiries, we also must consider the scheduling implications, because in order to provide a program with fidelity, each program has research related that identifies the necessary amount of time devoted to the lessons and learnings within that program. This is inclusive of the associated professional development for teachers who will want to have a sense of comfort and depth of understanding in terms of the use of the program. That's where we'll get the effective utilization of the program to deliver to the students to the degree needed. In turn, this time must be thoughtfully and intentionally articulate in the schedule so that we ensure and guarantee these learning experiences in each of our kindergarten programs. The information to my left of the slide are the components of the programs for which research supports, and we will be looking at programs that include these areas for early literacy instruction. And the information to my right on the slides are additional areas of instruction that will be part of our overall literacy block. These provide multiple opportunities to build background knowledge and to apply the learning from the program. This is just one piece of the overall literacy block that has guided reading, interactive read aloud, shared reading, and shared writing. We want to continue to have those rich literary experiences. So next steps, the group is convening. We're meeting this week. We will meet throughout May. We will return in June with recommendations. As mentioned previously, the funding for Master's grants supports these efforts and covers the fiscal responsibilities of these efforts. We will continue to collect data into the new year, along with the new program and the data the program will provide. We still need to continue to look at our core ELA resource and where we can ensure alignment to the standards and best practices with whatever core resource we will choose as we move forward, and that will live alongside this specific program. I just want to thank you for your time and ask if you have any wonderings, what ifs, or other questions.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open up, Ms. Garrison.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm just curious, what is the expectation that the district has for an incoming kindergarten student? Currently, like, you know, do you want them to know the sounds that A makes 3 sounds at A-R, or just know the letter, or, you know, like sort of specifics, like kinds of things that you're looking for the child to have?
Right, great question. So we look to the early childhood literacy standards that are provided by PDE, as well as the vertical viewer. Those would be what we would look to as where are they in this learning continuum. We then have to question and look closely to say, is it exposure or is it capability? So we will have students when they come in and they take some of these screening assessments to say possibly it's exposure, because we have students who have different learning experiences previous to coming into our classrooms. They might have attended a preschool where this was already taught. So does that mean then that the student who didn't receive that exposure, that we automatically place them into a different level of a kindergarten program? No, we just need to look at their acquisition rate when we go to show them if they can retain that information quickly. And sometimes, and this is a conversation we had, when we go to administer these assessments, to have those important conversations to say, talk with the family and say, would you like to come back in a week? Here are some things that you could do so we can compare even these 2 experiences. So that's what we look to do. But we definitely look to the standards and the early literacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kalish?
Thank you. So my question is a little more concrete, and I'm looking at this and I'm just thinking about how our implementation is going to work. And I'm wondering if part of what we're getting at is looking at a new, program that we're buying into. Like, I know my kid comes home with journeys or whatever for hers. I have a 2nd grader. But is that part of what we're talking about, is purchasing a new literacy program for the school? Or are we just looking at a new sort of perspective to teaching the program we already have to meet certain standards?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to lend some clarity because it gets confusion. It's multifaceted with literacy. So it is a program, but it would be addressing early literacy skills. Journeys is an anthology. That's the core ELA resource where it more addresses the strategies and reading comprehension in terms of reading to learn. That area, there isn't as much emphasis in the current Journeys program, which I say current, but it's from 2011, to address the areas of phonemic awareness, phonics. So that is why your district looked to supplement that resource to address the area of phonemic awareness and phonics. We are looking to have a program that explicitly and systematically addresses that area of need for those students who need it and to what degree. It lives alongside your other program.
That's fantastic.
Does that make sense? So,
absolutely.
Okay, so as we get this and we're getting this aligned, we then have to look at this version as well.
So is that something that the district is going to be developing on our own, or is that another program that we would be purchasing in parallel to work with what we already have?
We're looking to evaluate a couple of programs to work in parallel to what we already have. And then
Great.
we have guided reading level readers because it ensures that research is associated and it guarantees the learning experience, also the professional learning and instructional practice that's associated.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Sotner?
And I apologize, I feel like I've asked you these before, but
That's okay.
I liked your answer, so I'm going to ask them again.
No, I appreciate it. It helps me refine the presentation.
And so, and I think you kind of pointed that out with the last answer. So this is looking at what you have, what you need, but it's also looking at the program, the training, the facilitation. It's systematic evaluation
Yes.
of the pieces. So, and you also mentioned across school districts. So
Across the schools in the district?
yeah, across all the districts. So how do you kind of put all those pieces together so you ensure, like, moving forward, the quality stays all the way through? Because that is really hard and sometimes a big worry of parents. Oh, my kid has a different experience than your kid. What's going on?
Great question. So that scheduling articulation, that's where it comes into play. So scheduling articulation devotes, I could share it at a later date, it literally lays out, so for these first 30 minutes, we are going to provide this program, and here's the work that's associated, and they'll have like a pacing that goes along with the program. That's this new program. Then the next 15 minutes, decodable station readers to provide background knowledge, independent application, independent reading choice. The professional learning that's associated as, so what does that look like in my classroom? What should I be doing for those students who may not need this instruction? Where does that come in our effective utilization of our human resources in terms of the Title I assistants or literacy specialists that can challenge for those students who may not be in need of that systematic program, as well as those that need the additional support. So it's definitely, when we say articulation, it needs to be really clear, and that gets communicated with all teachers and as part of the conversation with all stakeholders in terms of the building administration. And our team, of course, as well, because then we go and do walkthroughs and some coaching just to ensure that we're guaranteeing those learning experiences. One of the things that has already come up in early conversations with implementation is whatever program should be chosen, we're not going to start right away in September. There's too much going on for the first 2 weeks of school. We want students to feel comfortable and build community. We will plan for probably the end of September and moving forward.
Awesome. I do think it's funny you're using articulation in multiple ways here. Nobody else gets the phonics joke. Okay. Sorry. just me. So you're going to be able, I love research, so clearly we can see it. You're going to be able to look across schools and then compare AM to PM, because I always find that fascinating, like the kids that are morning kids, the kids that are afternoon kids, and then EDK and K+. So the next question on everybody's mind is, are you going to be able to gain knowledge from this that you'll be able, I'm not doing anything, you'll be able to use to understand how to ensure that full day kindergarten is successful? Or will you be able to just have knowledge so you can apply it?
That's a great question as well. So it is a we, because we're all in this together, and it will be hearing from the teachers, their perspectives. We will continually have check-ins and I'm sure adjustments. It will inform, I would say, next steps so that we can be thoughtful and intentional, that when we move to and if we should move to this full day kindergarten program, where does it fit? And what does it look like? Because again, each student, each class is different. So to what degree do we use the program, when we use the program, based on what set of data points? That will need to be clearly articulated. And this experience will enable us to do that. And then we will also be able to articulate the other literary experiences, and I believe we mentioned purposeful play, which is that organic, authentic application of all the learned concepts across the content areas. So that's a generic way of looking at it, but we'll have that clear piece for the phonics instruction, early literacy instruction for those students who require the degree of that systematic program.
Great, awesome. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Mr. Lee?
Thank you. Could you go back to slide 4?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm just curious, the bar that you're measuring against in the beginning versus the middle, is it the same bar or is the bar getting harder as the year progresses?
It does get harder, and know that we have no control of these numbers. It's a composite. So the data warehouse, we enter the scores and
Okay.
it compiles this data, and it is not just one assessment, it is a few assessments that they then take into consideration and come up with a composite. And these are screeners, and I'm going to emphasize that it's just one area that we look at. We also look at their application, kid watching qualitative data. So we do see an increase. The score, I would say, that's required, for instance, when it was mentioned how many letter identification and letter sounds, the amount that would be required to hit a benchmark will increase as the year goes on.
Okay, so it looks like from the beginning to the middle in K and second, kids are sort of sliding to the right. You have more blues and fewer reds as a percentage, and even the aggregate number. But in first grade, you actually had fewer blues and more reds between the beginning and the middle. I was just curious what you thought might be causing that.
So I have a lot of questions. I don't really ever like to assume or jump to conclusions. It's been multiple conversations with our literacy specialists and our team to talk about, remember we said these guaranteed learning experiences. Without a systematic program, it's hard to tell. So we can have conversation to say, well, what is this first grade? Because I can break this down by class. To say, what's going on in this first grade class? How are you covering word work and phonemic awareness? That's where that scheduling articulation is essential. So that teachers aren't left to try to figure it out based on what they know to the degree of that program. So we're in process of answering that question, but instead of working harder, we really want to work smarter and say, we now will know. This is our first year too using this, the Dibble screener and the consistency in practice. So I wish I could give you a definitive response. We're just not there yet, but our eyes are on it, and that's why we're looking to have this evaluation.
Is this data from this current school year or from
Yes.
last year?
This is this year we started using the Dibble's 8
Okay, thank you.
edition.
Thank you.
Sure thing, thank you.
I have a question around the parent surveys and the parent input. I'm curious, because it references Title I surveys, and are those surveys done at all 6 elementary schools or just the elementary schools that are Title I schools? And does that make a difference? And is there a way to get parent feedback from, if it's only at the Title I schools, is there a way that's integrated to get feedback from parents that are at not the Title I schools?
So I'll answer your questions, possibly not in the order you presented them, but hold me accountable. The Title I surveys, the part of the survey that we were looking for, that it was open-ended, they are only in the Title I schools, so it's not to parents across the board. We weren't asking about the evaluation of a program, more about the type of instruction being received in a tier 2 support, and how they felt their kid was progressing. So we're coming at it at a different angle. That's more that professional learning piece we were kind of looking for. That is why we mentioned it. We mentioned any piece of data that we looked at that is informing our steps as we move forward. In terms of getting parent input across the district, we would have to we don't have that common experience right now other than in Title I we're using the same program, so we know that to be true. We could, take your recommendation and say overall experience in early literacy and what thoughts they are having. The achievement team is the building data and the qualitative data we're looking to also say where else is this coming through when we give running records or other types of assessments, or we see it in their writing. So that, we tried to be inclusive of everything we looked at.
Thank you. Sure. Do we have any other questions? All right, well, sure, go ahead, Ms. Garrett.
Are there any tools that we can give parents so they can help their child before they actually get to kindergarten, since we know that brain development from 0 to 2 is 80% and 90% by the time they get to be 5 years old, to take advantage of that rich time so that they come in, hit the ground running?
Absolutely. We can and we should. So we will look to see at the end of the year. I know through federal programs, again, I'm coming into the district normally around this time of year, we mail out to our local preschools exactly what you're speaking to, and we share it. I know there's kindergarten orientation, so we could enhance absolutely our family engagement. It's something we'll make note of to say, hey, maybe on our website we can just put a link as to those early literacy standards that we spoke about. That's a great idea. And again, forgive me, I'm getting familiar with all that exists currently, so if it's there, we'll just build upon it. So great thought, and yes, we will do that. I'm looking at Jen, so she'll hold us both accountable.
Ms. Schaffmeister?
Yeah. Well, one quick question. I was just, made me think about when you're talking about data. When we have kids coming in from different kindergarten areas, are we looking at data from, are we tracking it to the level of how the kids who are coming in who didn't take kindergarten at here compared to private kindergarten schools, and whether coming into them, whether they're coming in at a different level and then looking at how they were taught this phonetics at other schools as part of the data we're studying?
So again, I arrived in January, so I can't tell you if that's something we were doing, but it is something that we can take note of to say, as we move forward, are we seeing, I will say generically, and in my previous district, that speaks to exposure versus capability. If we can make note of where parents fill out a information sheet during the orientation, and in those questions, it usually highlights if they were part of a preschool program and if they received early literacy instruction, and if so, possibly what programs. So, but it would be hard to tease out. It would usually be how are they performing when we get through the year in application. But we can start tracking that data if we feel it's going to inform our instruction and provide us with some insights as to how we can improve upon our current practice. If we do currently, I do not see that or have access, but again, we can write it down.
Yeah, and sorry, that was loud. I can jump in real briefly. To my understanding, we're not tracking that now. We are tracking longitudinally some groups like our EDK population over time. I think we presented to the board on student learning and gains over time. One of the things that we have talked about is increasing the bridge between our local preschools and our kindergarten teachers and the district, just so we could have some more of those rich conversations about supporting early literacy, and our new data warehousing tool, Illuminate, which you've heard us share, has a lot of capability for us to do that more nuanced reporting. We're just not there yet.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Martin-Bertone and Dr. Gaudioso.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will now move on to the next part of our agenda. Just to note that there are no additional agenda items to be added this evening. So we'll now do audience recognition. At this time, Ms. LaPera will open the chat feature, and you will see a 10-minute timer appear on your screen if you are at home. You can submit your comments and/or questions via the chat feature. As always, please be sure to begin with your full name and where you reside within the district in order for your comment to be shared. And again, it just needs to be neighborhood. It doesn't need to be very specific. And I think Ms. LaPera is going to check to see if we have anyone signed up for in-person comments.
Hi, Jessica Zimmerman, Narberth. So there are numerous COVID outbreaks at Lmsd and extremely high numbers of COVID positive students on the dashboard. For example, in the first 5 days of May, there were 100 students at Harriton High School that tested positive, and an additional 23 Harriton High School students were added just for today. I have a few points to make. 1, Montgomery County Office of Public Health in their most recently updated guidance for K through 12 schools says that broad-based notification is required. Broad-based notification is defined by them as notifying a classroom or an extracurricular group of a single positive case. Is this happening? 2, MCOPH recommends assurance testing, which is routine testing of high-risk groups. Why did this stop, especially in light of the many outbreaks amongst extracurricular groups and sports teams? 3, mask to stay is a violation of the Pennsylvania Department of Health and CDC rules on quarantine. It violates the gold standard public health tool of quarantine for communicable diseases and is contributing to the spread amongst our schools. 4, over 50% of COVID positive individuals are still infectious after a 5-day isolation. The CDC advises that if an antigen test is still positive after a 5-day isolation, then one should continue to isolate for another 5 days. LMSD should actively encourage testing out of isolation with a negative antigen test before coming back to school. 5, in April of 2021, an LMSD classroom had a COVID outbreak because a damper in the ventilation system to that classroom malfunctioned and was too far closed. It was a well-publicized news story. Recently, an LMSD parent filled out a right-to-know form for CO2 numbers in her child's classroom. In the information she received, there were documented CO2 readings that were higher than 1,200 ppms, which indicates a problem with the ventilation system that needs fixing. The CDC recommends CO2 numbers below 800. The readings the parent was given were incomplete and did not go past September 2021. That parent was told there are not more recent CO2 readings to give to her. Why not? What is being done to monitor ventilation and fix the problems? Portable air cleaners are recommended to augment HVAC systems and can dramatically reduce the amount of virus in the air, yet LMSD is not using them. Why not? Since mandatory indoor masking was dropped, the COVID cases and outbreaks have spiked. It's time to bring back indoor masking. If LMSD is not going to do that, then in the very least, they should send out an email alerting families to the high COVID numbers and encouraging families to mask their children. Large, crowded, school-sponsored events are giving rise to outbreaks. Consider, in the very least, improving ventilation at these events by way of opening windows, adding portable air cleaners, and consider masking and testing for these events. For fully vaccinated or up-to-date asymptomatic close contacts, LMSD says masking is, quote, recommended, not required. MCOPH and the CDC use stronger language that directs masking in such scenarios. Why is LMSD watering down their language? Doing so is contributing to the spread.
Thank you, Dr. Zimmerman. Dr. Mamine, do you want to respond?
Yes, and I'll respond succinctly, and thank you so much, Dr. Zimmerman. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the meeting, a letter just went out to our families, and in that letter, there's one very simplistic statement, and I'll read it verbatim because everyone may not have had the opportunity to review the letter yet, since it just went out about an hour ago. At this time, neither the CDC nor MCOPH is recommending a return to mandatory universal masking in our schools. However, as you had mentioned in your comments, parents and guardians may want their children to return to wearing masks at school during the current period of increased transmission. And I openly stated in this letter to have the parents and guardians to discuss this. Please discuss this with your children so they understand your wishes on this issue. So we're still encouraging that parents screen their children for any signs of illness each morning and do not send them to school if they are symptomatic. Now, as we've stated throughout this, and again, we're very sensitive to the public comments, and of course, very much appreciative for Dr. Zimmerman, you bring this forward in our meetings, and we so appreciate it. We've had discussions around our CO levels and things of that nature in our classrooms. We're following these guidelines to the letter. One of the things that was mentioned earlier this evening with Ms. Schaefer is that we're seeing the increased numbers, but that's because we are doing our due diligence in regards to our reporting. You can't draw a straight line from district to district because the reporting mechanisms may differ. Again, we are trying our best. We're trying to stay agile and updated with all of the recommendations from, Balancing CDC and MCOPH, and we'll continue to take your input and use it as points for us to continue to inform our practice, especially around the work of the health and safety team.
Feel free to come talk to us after the meeting. Ms. Buckman, there's about 3 minutes left on the chat, but I think we can start, if you want to read.
Sure, they'll continue to come in. The first comment is from Rebecca Peebles, Bryn Mawr. Please consider mandating outdoor meals, masks for all positive students after quarantine, release CO2 numbers from this school year, and acknowledge that some schools in the district now deserve to utilize previously proposed on-ramps for mask mandates to return. The entire district may not need to do this, but certain schools do, particularly Harriton. The next comment is from Todd Ridke of Bryn Mawr. Please note that some nearby private schools have used outdoor lunch, snacks, pooled testing, and continued masks throughout the year to protect all families and have had no cases all year. We do not have to wait for CDC or other guidelines to direct obvious needs. Clearly, masking, testing high-risk groups, reconsidering mask to stay, improving and monitoring ventilation and outdoor eating is really helpful. Why aren't we doing this? I agree that Lmsd is reporting better. We have noted the differences in reporting and appreciate your transparency, but honestly, to fall back on MCOPH is silly given their lack of leadership on this issue. Those are the only comments at this time. There's still almost 2 minutes left.
Again, at the beginning of the meeting, and the letter has gone out to the families, and again, with the comments that are coming in online, very similar to Dr. Zimmerman coming publicly to the meeting, we appreciate the feedback for us to continually inform our practice and how we work, continue to work through this, work through this pandemic and adjust our practices at our schools and throughout the district. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mameen. We still have about a minute left for the chat, so I am just going to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to submit if they'd like to.
We do have one more comment. It's from Dina Yaski of Wynwood. We would like to see a more expedited timeline for full-day K. And that's the conclusion of the public comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buckman. Next, we do have a recommended action, a group of 3 together that Dr. Mamine will read all in one motion.
Thank you so much, President Klein. The first recommended action, the superintendent recommends that the Board of School Directors approves the attached human resources action. That's HR1, new hires, professional. The second recommended action, the administration recommends the Board of School Directors approve the attached PIAA application for school membership for Black Rock Middle School. And the third recommended action, the administration recommends the Board of School Directors approve the attached nomination for Melanie Schaffmeister to serve on the MCIU Board of Directors.
Are there any questions from the board? No. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Abstentions? Motion passes. And thank you, Ms. Schaffmeister, for your service with the Montgomery County Intermediate Union. We appreciate the additional time that you spend and take in for that.
It's very informative to sit on that board, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right, so we have a short meeting tonight. So we have some upcoming meeting dates that I wanted to share. In person here in the District Administrative Office's boardroom, unless otherwise noted. Wednesday is the May 11th Finance meeting on curriculum and instruction budget review. Again, 8:30 a.m. In person and live streamed. My date is covered. And recorded, sorry. May 12th is the Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting here at 8:30 a.m. May 16th, next Monday, is our next regular business board meeting, again, here in the District Administration offices at 8 p.m. And then on May 25th is the May 25th Communications Committee meeting, which would normally be held at 7 p.m., has been canceled. Just a quick plug for tomorrow morning at 9:30 is the Interschool Council Hot Topic with a presentation by Dr. Mamine, 9:30 a.m. via Zoom. You can get the information in your school newsletters. And at that time, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.